other words like gentleness and constancy. Does anyone know what constancy means? It means you're dependable. You're someone that can be counted on. You're constant, right? So in the pictures, we see, like I said, angels and people. But did you know there's also squirrels? I know, right? Squirrels and acorns. There's an anchor. There's a flame. There's a pomegranate. Exactly. Things you'd never expect in a church stained glass window. They're in there. And in a few weeks, I'm going to actually have a game that we'll play during fellowship hour where we try and find all of the funny things in the windows. Not this week, though. But, for now, I want you to, just take a look from where you're sitting. And they're beautiful windows. And think about how you can look at them and not necessarily notice those special little interesting things, right? Yes, Alice? Yes, they can be a story. And if you're paying attention, these windows can tell you more, right? They can tell you a story. So when we pay attention, when we notice the windows, this building, the people in it, we see things we didn't see before. And that noticing can help us to take care of one another with gentleness and be there for one another with constancy. So for now, until we get our game together in a couple weeks, we're going to go down to RE classes, and we invite our grown-ups to sing us out of this sanctuary.
I now invite us into a time of centering, first through words and then through ritual, kindling of the light, a time to light a candle here in the sanctuary or at home to signify a joy or sorrow you carry within. At that time, if you would like to have a candle brought to you, please raise your hand. After we kindle the light, we will be together during a time of shared silence, out of which we will remain seated and sing hymn number 90 in the gray hymnal, From All the Fret and Fever of the Day. We begin with these words, Psalm 23 for this moment by Kevin Tarsa. May I remember in this tender moment that love is my guide, always, shepherding me toward ways of openness and compassion. I have what I need, really, with love at my side, above me, below me, in front of me, behind me. Inside every cell of me, love infused everywhere. Just when the weight of the world I inhabit threatens to drop me in place and press my hope down into the ground beneath me, love invites me to rest for a gentle while and leads the center of my soul to the quiet, still, restoring waters nearby that somehow I had not noticed. And so love, quietly, sets me once again on its tender and demanding path. Even when the walls close around me and the cries of death echo through untold corners, gripping my heart with fear and sadness, I know that all will be well, that I will be well. When love whispers near to me, glints at the corner of my eye, rests with gentle and persistent invitation upon my shoulders, Yes, love blesses me, even as the sources and symbols of my pain look on. Love blesses me from its infinite well, and I turn and notice that goodness and kindness and grace follow me everywhere, everywhere I go. I live in a house of love, love that will not let me go. I live in a house of love and always will. Let us now kindle the light.
I've been thinking about the way, when you walk down a crowded aisle, people pull in their legs to let you by. Or how strangers still say, "Bless you," when someone sneezes, a leftover from the bubonic plague. Don't die, we're saying. And sometimes when you spill lemons from your grocery bag, someone else will help you pick them up. Mostly, we don't want to harm each other. We want to be handed our cup of coffee, hot, and to say thank you to the person handing it, to smile at them, and for them to smile back. For the waitress to call us honey when she sets down the bowl of clam chowder, and for the driver in the red pickup truck to let us pass. We have so little of each other now, so far from tribe and fire, only these brief moments of exchange. What if they were the true dwelling of the holy, these fleeting temples we make together when we say, "Here, have my seat. Go ahead, you first. I like your hat."
If you're comfortable to do so, I invite you to close your eyes. I want you to remember or imagine diving into the icy cold surf on a warm summer day. Feel the cold cutting into your skin, tingling, chilling you to the bone. However, stay there. If you stay in the water long enough, you cease feeling that chill. Indeed, it becomes quite comfortable. Now I want you to imagine that you're waiting at the door of the home of a friend who is cooking a big Italian-style dinner. As the door opens and you enter, you are overwhelmed by the pungent smell of olive oil and garlic simmering on the stove. Imagine it. However, stay there. Within a few minutes, you no longer notice it. Indeed, a few minutes later, another friend enters and comments on the powerful garlic odor, and you think, well, it's not really so noticeable. What I'm describing here is something that psychologists and others who study perception call sensory adaptation. As I teach general psychology each year, I spend a lot of time helping students understand this and related ideas. Basically, the idea is that you have sensory receptors in your bodies and that respond to certain kinds of stimulation. And over time, when that stimulation is constant, they stop responding. In the case of cold water, you have sensory receptors in the skin that respond to temperature. After they've been responding for a while, they stop responding. You've got used to the temperature around you. In the case of odor, we have sensory receptors in the nose that respond to chemicals in the air, and we perceive these chemicals as odors. After those receptors have been responding for a while, they stop responding. You can probably remember a time you got used to an odor, good or bad, and stopped noticing it. How many of us can recall getting used to a noise? Perhaps it's the sound of an air conditioner outside the window of your hotel room. The noise makes it difficult to sleep at first, but very soon, the constant rumble of the air conditioner is no longer something that you notice. You've adapted to it. We can actually use this tendency to our advantage. If you're sleeping in a place with unpredictable noise, you can use a white noise machine. It makes it hard to hear all the little creaks and groans, those unpredictable sounds of an old building, but we can become completely adapted to the constant noise, and we can sleep easily and soundly. So why does sensory adaptation happen? Why do we become less sensitive to this stimulation over time? Those who study such things theorize that this sensory adaptation has what we call survival value. Those who has survival value. Once the creature has noticed and processed this information, the sensory system can move on to other information. After all, why spend time focused on that bit of information in your environment when there might be something new on the horizon that might be important to notice? Imagine that you were an early human gathering and hunting on the African savanna. There is the sound of buzzing flies about, but you soon get used to that sound, adapt to it, and you are now freed up to notice other sounds, the far-off growling of a potentially dangerous predator, or the subtle sounds of potential prey animals. Being able to focus on the new, the different, rather than expending your energy on the old, constant information, may help you detect both threats and opportunities in the world around you. Clearly, it is not hard to see how this tendency has survival value. Sensory adaptation is part of a larger idea that psychologists call habituation. Habituation is a tendency to move from the familiar to the novel. Once you've learned most or everything about something in your environment, your attention moves quickly to other things. Anyone who has ever spent time with children knows this can happen. They tend to habituate to a new toy, that new pet rock, I'm aging myself, Cabbage Patch Doll, Tickle Me Elmo that they wanted so badly, soon goes unnoticed, left under a bed. Every semester that I teach, I talk with my students about these concepts. I encourage them to think of examples of their own and observe themselves on a daily basis. Like so many tendencies, neither sensory adaptation or habituation are bad or good. They just are. However, they can have both positive and negative consequences. In general, they help us to adapt in an ongoing way to an ever-changing environment. We are presented with new information all the time: sights, smells, odors, sensations, experiences. And habituation helps us sort these things out. I think that this idea of habituation has potential implications for our spiritual lives as Unitarian Universalists. At an individual, personal, and spiritual level, habituation has potential positives and potential pitfalls. In terms of positives, we can adapt to stresses, tolerate difficulties, we can adjust. Reducing our awareness of constant difficulties can be essential and helps make life more manageable. Indeed, distress tolerance describes the degree to which we have an ability to manage and live with distressing feelings, sensations, and emotions. Having more distress tolerance frees us up to focus on other things rather than our distress. For example, being able to habituate or get used to anxiety-producing situations means that the longer we stay in these situations, the more our anxiety goes down. Having habituated to the stress, we can face our fears, better tolerate inevitable pain, and keep moving toward our goals. We've been gifted with an ability to manage in our constantly changing and challenging world. At the same time, habituation has pitfalls. Habituation means that we can easily become used to the beauty around us and seek to notice the constant, simple, everyday sources of potential pleasure, even joy. This seems to be, I think, a particular risk for people in communities such as ours, with ready access to so many resources that can provide pleasure and joy. We can become a lot like a child in a room full of toys, bored, waiting for the next new thing, that toy that eventually ends up under the bed, collecting dust. We are not so different as adults. Think air popper, pasta maker, or perhaps that new Peloton. Perhaps you've practiced mindfulness. Mindfulness is a spiritual practice of focusing on the present moment, engaging the senses to truly experience the here and now, to apply a moment-to-moment intentionality to living. Perhaps we could think of mindfulness as a spiritual antidote to habituation. In small and present-focused ways, we can connect to the divine. However, mindfulness takes practice and a not small amount of commitment. I've thought for a long time about the implications of habituation from my own research, which is focused on families going through hard times. I'm particularly interested in families experiencing the stress of mental illness and how to help them cope and encourage all members to thrive. And so I've been applying some of the spiritual implications for myself of this tendency to habituate. So to this point, I've been focusing on the impact of habituation at a personal and spiritual level, but let's think about how it can play out in relationships, both for the good and the not so good. In the best of circumstances, we can habituate to some of the minor frustrations and irritations in our relationships. In this case, you can forgive a dear friend's tendency to hum while driving, a sibling's tendency to use the word like with regularity, or your spouse's tendency to say aloud all that they are thinking. Getting used to mild irritations and annoyances is the price we pay for the many rewards relationships bring. Yet this tendency to habituate to minor annoyances is sometimes not present. Indeed, for relationships under stress, habituation can sometimes be replaced by sensitization, where the stimulus produces more of a reaction over time. If you are willing, close your eyes and imagine this. You are a young teenager left alone at home at night for the first time. You hear some minor noises out behind the house. You are now on alert. Every minor croak and groan of your house, every sound out back is increasingly noticeable. Of course, this has to do with the situation, the context. This situation, being at home, alone, is a new one that does not feel particularly safe or ordinary. In this context, habituation doesn't occur, but it's rather its opposite, sensitization. In relationships under stress or with few positive attributes, minor difficulties, irritations, threats can become increasingly noticeable. Too often, when individuals are in relationship difficulties, they are more prone to notice shortcomings of their relationship partners rather than all the positive things that may be happening. Like the teenager alone in the house on a windy night, relationships in distress can feel threatening and emotionally unsafe. This tendency toward sensitization, like our tendency toward habituation, can also be adaptive, actually. For example, children who live in homes where violence is common become sensitized to small signs that indicate increased risk, and they become very keen observers of slight parent behaviors. They've become sensitized. Actually, this can be helpful. When they see the situation going downhill, they may be able to get out of the line of fire. They may be able to absent themselves. In a marriage characterized by frequent criticism, spouses can become increasingly sensitized to more and more minor statements and responses that could be perceived as critical. This can lead to increasing distance between partners, an attempt by each to protect themselves. When a relationship doesn't feel safe, either physically or emotionally, sensitization can occur. So both habituation and sensitization can impact relationships. It's easy to fall into a habit of both noticing and not noticing. Most psychological interventions that focus on relationships, couples therapies, family therapies, parenting therapies, all begin with shifting away from a problem focus to a strength focus. This is not to say that we should ignore problems and not address shortcomings. It is to say that we should start from a place of strength, recognizing not just what doesn't go well, but holding close to our hearts all that does go well. Over the last few decades, my colleagues and I have been developing family-based psychological interventions for people with mood disorders, both depression and bipolar disorder. In working with depressed children, we start by asking families to work on noticing all that is going well. During hard times and when relationships are in distress, we're focused on problems. The positives become the background noise, the thing we sometimes cease to notice. Our initial work with families is about bringing those positives out of the background and into the foreground. One thing we do is a simple game. Each family member gets 5 brightly colored poker chips. It is the job of each member to give them all away. Each time another member does something that they like, value, or appreciate, they give a chip. It could be a big thing, making a nice meal, getting a good grade, reaching a goal. Most of the time, though, we want it to be something simple, very simple, smiling, helping out, showing kindness, showing up. It's about the little things people do every day, the little things we often fail to notice. The goal is not to change behavior, but to notice the good. What goes well with us? What works? What do we appreciate and value in others? What pleasure do others bring to our lives? The chip is not a reward, it's a message. I notice you and the good you bring. It is a refocusing on the subtle but often lovely background noise of our relationships. It is the small, everyday behaviors. With this more firmly rooted in our present experience, we can move on to improving our communication with one another and solving problems that we confront. We can become a better team. At the same time, the problems that lead to this place need to be addressed. Do the relationships feel safe, physically, emotionally, spiritually? Do family members get their needs met? Does the family value and promote growth for all its members? Do they have skills to communicate and solve problems effectively? How do we reduce sensitization and respond realistically and helpfully? So what does all this discussion of habituation and sensitization have to do with our spiritual life as you use? I would argue that it underscores the ways in which we as humans, as biological creatures, have a tendency to respond in particular ways to the world around us, to react automatically. Perhaps we can be more intentional as we consider these tendencies and that can promote our well-being in the world and how they help and get in the way of both personal and interpersonal and spiritual growth. Can we use these ideas to increase our awareness, to live more intentionally, to notice what is around us in our lives and in our relationships? I think back over the last few years of my life and the life of my family. I recognize that, like for so many others, it's been a period of pervasive stress and a not small amount of pain. I'll share one major event for me. A few months into the COVID epidemic, in June 2020, my mother came down with a high fever. A week later, she was in the hospital, where she stayed for almost a month. From there, she went to hospice. She died on October 3rd, 2020, less than a month before her 83rd birthday. My loss started when she was hospitalized, as I was never, ever able to see her again in person. Part of the loss is that I had habituated to her presence in some ways, came to expect her regular phone calls and conversations. It was in her absence that I began to notice the big but often subtle losses. I tried throughout this time and since to think, feel, remember, experience. Sometimes the pain has been raw and visceral, but there is value in that experience as well. I have also tried to notice what is around me, what she left, the subtle things. Scarves she knitted, the earrings she gave me for my birthday, memories of her adventurousness, fearlessness, and love of fun. The funny and descriptive thank you notes she always sent me. I continue to try to connect with the small memories, a concert in Rockport, skating with her on Venice Beach in Southern California, washing dishes together. Small, distant memories, precious and irreplaceable. In addition, I've worked on noticing those around me, their small acts of kindness and caring. Noticing the beauty in my world is not necessarily easy. Sometimes I have been habituated to the beauty around me, habituated to the high level of support and generosity that is so fortunately available to me in my everyday life. I want to be intentional daily. I want to notice. It is a spiritual practice and not one I'm always very good at. I'd like you to take a moment and consider a particular relationship in your life, someone important to you. What do they do that you find valuable, precious, special? What small things do you notice? What small things have you habituated to? How can you and me live more intentionally? How can we enhance our ability to notice the beauty in the world around us and in our relationships? That, I think, is one of our many spiritual challenges. Thank you.
As we know, we are living through a time of significant inflation. Everything costs more, and costs more to feed our bodies, to shelter our families, to keep ourselves warm. We may be thinking more about our essential costs these days. So one could argue that giving to a congregation is not an essential cost, but I would argue that our presence here today reminds us that we believe that, and that so much that is important is about thinking for needs beyond our own. So for those who can give today to the offertory, we encourage you to give generously. One part of giving to the offering at the Winchester Unitarian Society is the recognition that each week we share our gifts with organizations living out Unitarian Universalist values. This morning, we share the plate with the Women's Lunch Place, whose mission is to inspire hope and support the development of self-sustaining skills for women experiencing hunger, homelessness, and poverty. We create a safe, welcoming day shelter community in which we respect the dignity of our guests. We build trusting relationships, provide individualized, integrated services focused on nutrition, health, housing, and economic empowerment. Here are the different ways you can donate. Those here in the sanctuary may give cash, checks, or donate electronically. Text to the number in your order of service or visit the website under the giving page. Please write or type the date of your offering in the memo line or comment field. If you're visiting for the first time, either in person or online, you are our guest. The most valuable thing you can offer in this moment is your contact information so we can stay connected beyond this Sunday. In-person attendees can find a physical visitor card in the pew rack in front of you. Please complete it and put it in the collection plate. Information about how to give online and how to complete the virtual visitor card will soon be projected on the screen, so our friends live streaming at home will have access to this information. After this information is displayed, all of us will view some of the contributions to UU Lent from this past week. Today's UU Lent theme is pluralism. We invite you to engage one another with the questions, where is pluralism present in your everyday life? Where is it absent? The offering will now be generously given and gratefully received. Those who wish to do so are invited to join in the unison affirmation of shared ministry. We gather not for ourselves alone, but to use our common power to build the beloved community within and beyond these walls. We create and reaffirm this covenant this day to make justice flourish, to practice compassion amidst difference, and to embody transformative love. Let us rise in body or in spirit to join in singing hymn number 331 in the gray hymnal, Life is the Greatest Gift of All.
Close today's service with words by a former minister of the Winchester Unitarian Society, the late Reverend Mary Harrington. Every day, look at the world with your wide and grateful eyes. Every day, let something kill you with delight. Let go of all that is harsh and harmful every day. Remember each day as a God. Each day arrives wrapped in its particular mystery and intent. Be still and know the gods of your days. Each day, chain yourself to the tree of life. Every day, however desperate, love one thing hard. Say to all with ears to hear, thy life is a miracle every day. Never forget the world needs your precise gifts. Each day, offer and bless, stand and love, surrender and praise. Live with all your might, love with all your heart, and may you go in peace.
What a way to welcome spring. Thank you, John. Please join me in reciting together the words for extinguishing our chalice, printed in your order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. This service has ended, but our life of service continues. Let us enjoy social hour in the Sims room and then on to Operation Rummage and lunch and listening. And quilts.